Celtic Myths and Legends by T.W. Rolleston, Chapter 8, Myths and Tales of the Cymry. The Conte del Graal. The tale of Christine de Troyes, called the Conte del Graal, or Percival la Galois. La Galois. Guess you're not supposed to pronounce the S right. Launched the story in European literature. It was written about the year 1180 of the Common Era. It agrees in the introductory portion with Peredur, the hero here being Percival. He is trained in knightly accomplishments by an aged knight named Ganymedes, who warns him against talking overmuch and asking questions. When he comes to the Castle of Wonders, the objects brought into the hall are a blood-dripping lance, a graal, accompanied by two double-branched candlesticks, the light of which is put out by the shining of the graal, a silver plate and sword, the last of which is given to Percival. The bleeding head of the Welsh story does not appear, nor are we told, but the graal was. Next day, when Percival rode forth, he met a maiden who upbraided him fiercely for not having asked the meaning of what he saw. Had he done so, the lame king, who is here identical with the Lord of the Castle of Wonders, would have been made whole again. Percival's sin in quitting his mother against her wish was the reason why he was withholden from asking the question which would have broken the spell. This is a very crude piece of invention, for it was manifestly Peredur's destiny to take arms and achieve the adventure of the Grail, and he committed no sin in doing so. Later on in the story, Percival is met by a damsel of hideous appearance who curses him for his omission to ask concerning the lance and the other wonders he had done, so the king would have been restored and would have ruled his land in peace. But now maidens will be put to shame, knights will be slain, widows and orphans will be made. The conception of the question episode seems to me radically different from that which was adopted in the Welsh version. It is characteristic of Peredur that he always does as he is told by proper authority. Well, yeah, when it's proper authority, but typically being too obedient ends up being a problem, doesn't it? The question was a test of obedience and self-restraint, and he succeeded in the ordeal. In fairy literature, one is often punished for curiosity, but never for discretion and reserve. The Welsh tale here preserves, I think, the original form of the story. But the French writers mistook the omission to ask questions for a failure on the part of the hero, and invented a shallow and incongruous theory of the episode and its consequences. Strange to say, however, the French view found its way into latter versions of the Welsh tale, and such a version is that which we have here in the Mabinogion. Peredur, towards the end of the story, meets with a hideous damsel, the terrors of whose aspect are vividly described, and who rebukes him violently for not having asked the meaning of the marvels at the castle. Hadst thou done so, the king would have been restored to health, and his dominions to peace. and his dominions to peace, whereas, from henceforth, he will have to endure battles and conflicts, and his knights will perish, and wives will be widowed, and maidens will be left portionless, and all this is because of thee. I regard this loathly damsel as an obvious interpolation in the Welsh tale. She came into it straight out of the pages of Crestion. That she did not originally belong to the story of Peredur seems evident from the fact that in this tale the lame lord who bids Peredur refraining from asking questions is, according to the damsel, the very person who would have benefited by his doing so. As a matter of fact, Peredur never does ask the question, and it plays no part on the conclusion of the story. Crestin's unfinished tale tells us some further adventures of Perceval and of his friend and fellow knight Gawain, but never explains the significance of the mysterious objects seen at the castle. His continuators, of whom Gautier was the first, tell us that the Graal was the cup of the Last Supper, and the lance that which pierced the side of whom the Christians call Christ at the crucifixion. And that Peredur ultimately makes his way back to the castle, asks the necessary question, and succeeds his uncle as lord of the castle and guardian of its treasure. So how does this relate to what we personally can be?